Hi, welcome to the Urban Outdoorsman SoCal video. My name is Danny Milton, and today we're going to be talking about the 2019 Jeffsy, the 29er, the CF Pro. I previously did a couple of videos for this bike. The first part one, was the initial feel and kind of like going over the components, the manufacturer, all that kind of stuff, and you can click on that link right there to watch that video. I also did another video, which was the second time I went down to ride this bike. That was just more of like a raw footage of me going down Car Crash Trail and Ricky Bobby, and you can click on that link there to watch that video as well. So the first thing we're going to talk about is pedaling this bike uphill. And this is an all-mountain bike, meaning that it has a little bit steeper seat tube angle and steeper head tube angle. So you sit up a little bit more upright on the bike. You don't have quite as long of a reach as, say, like an enduro type bike. It's not as slacked out and whatever. So this bike should be, and actually is, really good at climbing uphill. So anytime I demo a bike, I leave the shocks wide open, the front shock and the rear shock. That way you can get a better feel for the low bump sensitivity when you're climbing uphill.
It's pedaling really well. I feel the back end moving a little bit, like on those steeper sections when I'm really pushing the pedals fast. It's pretty rock solid, especially considering it's a single tube rear shock and doesn't have a piggyback or anything.
While pedaling in a seated position uphill on this bike, the anti-squat stays very high, meaning that you're not going to feel a lot of sag in the rear shock, and the pedal bob is going to be kept to a minimum. So when you do have to get out of the saddle and pedal up a steeper part of the trail, the bike suspension doesn't sag down too low. It still stays really high in that suspension travel, and it's very good climbing through those steeper sections. So if you want to learn a little bit more and a little bit more in depth into how anti-squat works and this whole 4-bar link or horselink system, I'll put a link in the description below. It's another YouTuber called Trail POV. He goes very in depth to how these systems work and how this 4-bar system works. He's showing you on the Ransom, but it's a very similar system that YT uses. So overall, this bike pedals really well uphill. The only thing that I would change in this bike is, for some reason, I don't know why, this bike has the SRAM drivetrain, so it has the 10 to 50 tooth cassette in the rear. But for some reason, I don't know, they have a 34 tooth chainring in the front. And that's a really large chainring for me. Typically, most enduro bikes that I ride usually have like a 30 or a 32. This one, I guess, maybe because it's an all-mountain bike, it has a 34. For me personally, I would switch that down to a 30, and with the added, kind of torque that you're going to get out of that 30-tooth chainring and that SRAM drivetrain to the rear, this thing will be a mountain goat and super, super light, once you get into that eagle gear with that chainring. So now we're going to talk about how this bike did on the downhill. And of all the trails that I did a Car Crash a couple times. I did Ricky Bobby at least 3 or 4 times. I also did Sloppy Seconds and one of the other intermediate trails kind of going across the entire park, and got a pretty good feel of how this bike does downhill. This is probably the shortest travel demo bike I've ever done. Most of the bikes that I demo are usually enduro bikes, ranging anywhere from 150 to 170 millimeters of front fork travel, similar to like the HD5 and the Yeti SB150, which I just demoed a couple weeks ago. So that being said, I had a lot of fun on this bike on all of the trails that I rode it down in San Clemente. It never felt like I didn't have enough suspension travel. Some of the smaller drop-offs I did, on the top of Car Crash, and some of those chunkier sections, the bike just flowed through those really well, and the suspension felt great.
All right, better that time because I knew what to expect. Coming to this part. Woo! Just gotta send it, Danny boy.
Even on a couple of those drops, they're not big drops, like 1.5, maybe 2 feet. It never felt for me, and I'm a bigger rider, 240 pounds. I never felt the shock bottom out. It had a very nice kind of progressive feel as I got towards the bottom of the travel on those bigger drops.
Woo, that's a big drop right there. And Another nice little like 1.5, 2 foot drop right there. Bike absorbed it really well.
I was a little bit worried about the shorter wheelbase on this bike. It's 1244 millimeters. I'm looking at my notes here. And like I said, most of the enduro bikes have a little bit longer of a wheelbase, so that makes it a little bit more stable at speed. And this bike having that shorter wheelbase, I didn't feel it at all. And a lot of the sections that I was going on were kind of like full speed, real flowy, kind of, you know, big berms and stuff like that. And not once, even over the rock garden section at the top of, or near the bottom of Car Crash, it felt really stable and very planted, and the wheelbase, not a problem at all.
This kind of feels like Five Oaks a little bit. All right.
So the one thing that I always worry about when I ride a 29er is how nimble and how quick that front end is going to turn. Say for instance, like the High Tower and the Mega Tower, those are both Santa Cruz bikes. For me, just my personal experience, those bikes, those 29er bikes tend to understeer for me in really switchbacky, kind of fast sections. When you're going in a straight line, they work great. So this bike, this is the first YT bike I'd ever ridden, especially a 29er. This bike was really good at low speed. It was very nimble. At high speed, it was very nimble. I never felt like this was a slow turning 29er. It just felt like a great bike. I mean, it felt just as good as my Giant Rain or any of the other bikes that I've demoed, like the HD5 or any of the Yetis. The front end was very quick, very nimble, and felt very planted to the ground.
Yeah, this bike does not ride like a bad 29er. It rides like a good 29er. Very nimble in the front end. Very planted and stable. Whew. And that's all she wrote.
So the only problem I did have with this bike were the brakes. I'm not a big SRAM brake person. I love SRAM drivetrains. I have a GX drivetrain on my bike, but I like XT brakes. I like, you know, the on-off kind of feel of an XT brake. The SRAM brakes, most of them, unless they're bled really well, they're just too progressive for me. And when I have to really clamp down to feel myself slowing down on a bike, it kind of gives me an uneasy feeling. So I wasn't able to push this bike quite as fast as I would like to into some of those corners, just because, you know, I'd have to start slowing down even sooner than I'm used to. And like I said, it's the only thing that I would change on this bike, other than the chainring for climbing, would be these brakes. So overall, this is a really good bike. I had so much fun. If you watch any of the riding video, I had so much fun on this bike, and it was just a blast. These bikes are factory direct, so you know, you order them online and they ship it to you. There's very little that you have to put together. You have to put the tires on and maybe the handlebar and the cockpit area. But they're very affordable, and this is the 2019 model. They do have an outlet store. You can find specific models and sizes at a little bit of a cheaper price. This bike, when it first came out, was $4,000. Right now, it's just on the outlet site. They have them listed all the way down to like $3,200 if you can find the size that you need. So this bike was great both uphill and downhill. So this is definitely what I would call an all-mountain bike. The travel, the 140 millimeters of travel, are gonna probably see most people, most riders, through pretty much any trail that you're gonna ride, even on some, you know, black diamond trails. I wouldn't recommend this bike, you know, for say like some really crazy stuff, or even like bike parks. You know, if you're really full speed and jumping like that, the 140 millimeters of travel might not be enough for that kind of stuff. For me, I would definitely want something a little bit longer if I was gonna do something like that. I would definitely recommend this bike. They have a bunch of different models ranging from the CF Pro Race all the way down to the aluminum versions. You can get really good prices on them and have it shipped directly to your house. One thing I will tell you is if you are here in Southern California, I would definitely go down to their headquarters down there in San Clemente. You want to go on the website. I'll put the link down in the description. It's called Bike Manager. You want to go through them because it's to demo the bikes, it's not on their regular site. You go to this bike manager, the bike manager site, and looking at the thing here. And you can schedule a demo any day of the month. You can have it for anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. You can choose any of the bikes that they have. Now they do have a limited number of sizes in each bike, but like I said, you can go down there, you can demo them for free and just have a blast and try it out for yourself. Okay, thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate it. Do all that fun stuff. Hit that like button. Share this video with all of your friends. Definitely leave me comments down below if you have any questions about the bike. I'm sure I'm gonna get plenty of comments comparing, how do I feel about this bike compared to other bikes as well. Leave those comments. Tell me, did you like the video? Did you not like the video? Is there something I could do differently in the video? The more comments I get, the more YouTube will suggest this video to other people, and the more I can get these videos out there. The last thing I'll ask you to do is definitely subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate that as well. All right, last but not least, click on one of these videos up in the corners here. One will take you to a favorite ride, another one to a favorite playlist, and also you can click on that logo in the center, the Urban Outdoorsman SoCal logo, to subscribe. Thanks a lot.